Welcome to the CEO Bros Podcast, After Hours, with Brian Balduf, co-founded, grew, and sold VHT Studios. Brad Balduf, CEO and co-founder of By Your Side Autism Therapy Services. Matt Croke, the consummate entertainer, jack of all trades, and serves as our host.
You want to go into that real fast? You want to tell
the Cuban thing?
Yeah, you should. Why not? Let's do
the
it.
Mark Cuban.
Yeah, so welcome to CEO Bros. It's after hours.
Cheers,
welcome to the
cheers.
end of a long week. So when we finished on funding, we actually talked for like another 30 minutes about funding and you went into a story about a little license.
No, I'm trying to get a little. There you go.
A little what's that called? ASMR. You talked about funding for By Your Side and Mark Cuban. You have a story about that. So I know this is a new episode and we have a topic. We're going to talk about customers today, but we also want to continue about funding a little bit because we were talking a lot after the last show.
Yeah, we were talking about
Just so much to go into on that.
Well, the whole thing that's kind of funny when you're pursuing funding sources, independent investors. It was just so funny, the whole story that came about with Mark Cuban, because everybody knows Mark Cuban from Shark Tank and at the time, we have our company and we're running By Your Side. We started another company called Blue Parachute, and Blue Parachute's out there. It's called theblueparachute.com, and it's a library of video content that people can download, purchase a video, or subscribe to videos on a monthly basis. And so we were talking about incremental to funding to get this off the ground. It would be great if we could get some national or international exposure. So wouldn't that be kind of cool if we got Mark Cuban involved? And the funny thing was, I didn't even bring it up with the investors. I just thought, for shits and giggles, I'll just reach out to Cuban and say, hey, you want in on this company? Not thinking he's going to answer, not thinking, the guy's busy. He's got 100 things going on. And, I did some search. I wound up getting an email. I thought it was total BS, but I'm like, yeah, I'll reach out to him, and reached out to Cuban. And literally like 2-3 days later, I get a response from Mark Cuban, and I'm thinking, well, this has got to be some kind of scam or something. But the reason why right away I thought it could be true is because of how he responded. He said, if I get involved in this, what do I get out of it? And I thought that was kind of funny, because you would think from some high-powered, celebrity investor, celebrity, that he'd have some assistant responding like, Mr. Cuban has received your email. He appreciates your efforts in this. But this was literally just, what do I get from
right
this?
to the chase.
Right to the chase.
Right.
And I was like, okay, well, I'll respond. And the reality was that we were positioning him to fund this new business venture. So it just goes to show you how these roller coasters can happen. We were going to get funding from him to fund this new company, Blue Parachute. And he said, well, why are you back and forth in email? He said, well, how are you qualified to do this with autism? I said, well, we have an autism therapy business called By Your Side. And he said, well, tell me about that. I want to know about that company and what's going on with that. And I said, well, that company's doing fine. Actually, the company's doing well. We're opening centers. We're growing the business.
Just the kind of stuff he likes to invest in.
And he's like, you know what? How about we put this other Blue Parachute to the side? I want in on that. And of course, that just threw this massive story into high gear, because that was never even a consideration. We weren't seeking funding. We were growing the business. I had my investor group on By Your Side and pursuing him for a new business venture, and he didn't have anything to do with it. He goes, I'll talk to you about that when you get me in on this. So first of all, I'm just shocked I'm dealing with Cuban, right? I'm just like, okay, I can't believe he responded. But kudos to him, props to him. This guy is a deal maker. And so he's looking for a deal. And actually, I learned after the fact from some of his handlers that he is a deal junkie. He loves just doing deals, which kind of that's how he appears on Shark Tank too. Yeah. He's like that in real life. And it was pretty funny.
He's got a team. Sounds like, yeah.
He's got a team. He's got, in fact, one of the guys I ultimately met with from his team says that he manages 165 companies for Mark. So he's got 165 different business ventures going at the same time. And Mark just reviews them on a weekly basis, makes big key decisions with those CEOs or business owners, and goes from there. But the funny thing, what I thought was funny about the story, when I learned from him, and I actually thought it was amusing too, was that so Blue Parachute got pushed to the side, and by her side came in the main frame. So I had to go back to my investor group. I had to go to my board of directors, who had no idea that I was positioning something altogether differently. And I said, hey guys, okay, Mark Cuban wants to put money in on buyer side for a percentage ownership, and they said,
"Ever see Shark Tank?" I got a quick well,
and they said, "Are we even pursuing that? Like, is that something we didn't even know we needed that?" And I go, "I didn't think we needed that either, but he's now involved. You guys want to do this because he could be the rocket fuel to grow, buyer side nationally or bigger, And so we went from pursuing one company to getting back to the original company and him investing potentially in that. And it set off this whole sequence of conversations between him and I. And it happened, what I thought was pretty amusing was one night I'm sitting in bed at like 1 a.m. and my wife goes, "You look like absolute crap. You need to go to bed. You've been up for like 2 days straight. And like, what are you doing?" I go, "Well, the hell if I'm going to bed now, because I'm talking back and forth with Cuban, and I'm not going to be the last one to fall. I'm not going to be the first one to fall asleep. He will be." So we're going back and forth, and what are you going to get? And how do I get this? And how do I get involved? Tell me about autism. What do you know about therapy? I mean, just rapid fire for 3 hours. In the middle of the night, my eyes, I got these, just haven't had any sleep. And I'm like, I cannot believe I'm going through with this. And later my wife goes, "You got to go to bed." And I said, "I'm not going to bed, man. He's going to bed first." It's not going to happen, So sure enough, like 3:34 in the morning, we have this rapid fire exchange, and then he goes quiet for probably about an hour and a half, and I'm just sitting there waiting for a response. It doesn't come through. And finally, at about 6 in the morning, he responds to a question from an hour and a half earlier. And I said, "Oh, Mark, did you go to bed? Did you take a nap?" And he goes, I didn't take a nap. I didn't go to bed. What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, you were gone for an hour and a half." He goes, "I just was taking a break." And I go, "No, I think you were taking a nap. I think you actually went to bed. Maybe you're not." And it was just funny that we got so back and forth. We wound up not doing a deal because the reality was he wanted to have more and more, and rightfully, I get it, for his celebrity. He wanted more and more control of the business that we were willing to give up. But it was an exciting conversation. I learned a lot.
Since you weren't even looking for that opportunity.
We were looking for it. I learned a lot from Mark. Yeah. I learned a lot from his team that represented him. His team, he sent a member of the team. He took it very seriously. He sent a member to come in to do due diligence, viewed our centers. And for a while, it was exciting for our employees. It was exciting for our investor group because Cuban could potentially get involved. And he even sent us a video for our 10-year anniversary saying, "Hey, to Brad and the team at Buyer Side, I wish you guys all the best of luck on your anniversary." And it was really cool to see it, but it just goes to show you that the way of a potential funding opportunity could develop and where it went, what direction. It wound up fizzling out. It didn't work out the way that it could have or should have, but for good reason. Yeah. And we both mutually parted ways. But I just thought it was funny. We're talking funding last session.
And you beat him by staying up later than him?
I don't want to say I beat Mark. I'll probably get some comment on our YouTube saying you did not do that.
I didn't go to bed. I can prove I have the receipts.
Yeah, but props to Mark. He's as wealthy and as successful as the guy is, he's still a deal maker at heart, and he wants to do deals. And I just thought it was a funny story, appropriate story coming up at the time that we were talking about funding.
Great.
So
I have a tie into that, believe it or not.
To Cuban?
Yeah, kind of a full circle. You reminded me. So when we first started in like 97, 98, video home tours, we had to host the videos somewhere. And really the only place that was available at the time was broadcast.com, which was his company that he started
his
out
company.
Of his dorm.
He sold
or
for billions, I think.
He sold it to YouTube for $1 billion. And now we're on YouTube.
That's kind of funny.
Comes full circle. But I remember at the time, we said, the money's in creating the videos. Who would want to host videos? That's stupid.
Well, he did pretty well for himself.
Yes, he did a little better than I did. So
yeah. This goes funny. It's funny though, like where you go after funding, and here's the other thing: dream big or think big. There's no reason. I mean, we were engaged in a full conversation about funding. He was going to fund the business, and there was a very real possibility up until there were some certain covenants that we just couldn't live with, and we mutually decided to part ways and to say, hey, it doesn't work out at this time. But the fact that he gave consideration to the business is very cool, and maybe we'll cross paths.
Well, that's why I asked about the timing. Like, do you wait until you really need it, or are you always proactive? This may be a very stupid question. Is there ever a thing that's too much money? Like, do you get an opportunity and say, I don't need it right now. I don't want to be in that debt. I don't want, or you take anything that comes your way.
It was, you know what, though? It wasn't about the money for us. It wasn't about how much money Mark would be willing to pony up. The reason we backed away from it, it was how much control we had to give up of our own company. It wasn't the amount of equity ownership we'd have to give up in the business. It was the control that he expected for his investment, which rightfully has every right to do that.
And didn't you also be approached by someone in the beginning and you said, like, let me just stop you right there. I'm not giving up control. And they're like, oh, no. And then you got through this long process, did all this, and then they twisted on you and you're like, I told you guys.
Yeah, it winds up the way it was presented originally and where it ultimately gets to. But on the funding side,
do they have to be careful of that? Do entrepreneurs have to be careful when they're having those conversations, or what should they look for?
Well, it was a point Brian brought back probably in the middle of last week where he said, like, hey, if you don't have to give up the equity, stay away from it. Like, try to preserve as much of your equity as you possibly can. Look for short-term bridge loans. Look for temporary lines of credit. Mm-hmm. But don't give up your equity unless you absolutely have to.
Revenue.
What's that?
Solves all problems.
Revenue is the salve that heals all wounds. Yes. So,
well, the topic today was going to be customers, and it's still going to be. So,
that's where your revenue comes from.
That's where the revenue comes from. And it seems like such a simplistic idea, but I think this is another one that maybe people don't fully understand the concept of customers. So I don't know where you want to start with it, but I remember from the first episode, you saying people get so enamored about the product and all that, and you're like, where's the customer coming from?
Where's the revenue? Where's the revenue coming from if you don't have your client?
Yeah, to me, it's the most important thing. And what we had talked about is, people get off on, the product development or, decorating their store or their restaurant or their advertising, their how things look and stuff. You've got to get customers as soon as possible. You've got to get revenue coming in. I mean, this is a business. That's what it's all about. And if you don't have that plan well thought out, then you're going to be in a world of other issues, whether it's cash or needing funding when you don't really want to take funding, or being crushed by competitors, or just being irrelevant, basically. So...
And also, Brian, I would say, we always talk about finding new customers, but take care of your existing customers. I mean,
well, if you have them, as a startup, you don't even have any.
I mean, because I was thinking through, like, a lot of times, like, okay, I got the client, I got the customer, and I got them through the door. It's like, but you got to nurture it if it's a reoccurring type business model.
Well, So what does a customer look like starting from the beginning on this?
Yeah, so depending on the kind of business you have, is this I always refer to them as a customer is a transaction. So I'm a retail store and they just come in and they buy something, they leave. That's a customer. Or there's clients, and a client is a recurring customer. So I'm a service provider. I provide a service for you every month, or you've got software, or I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm an accountant, is a client. So that's an important distinction, because transactions, you got to win transactions every day, all day. Recurring clients, recurring revenue, subscription revenue is beautiful because it's there. The more clients you get in, the more monthly revenue you've got. But it's two totally different business models. It takes a lot of different, Even
though obviously you want the client to come back to your store, but you're still saying you got to fight for that every day.
You got to fight for that every day.
Because they may not. They're not a subscription.
Right. That's a brutal business. Like for our business, a lot of our competitors looked at home tours as a transaction. Like, how many home tours can I shoot in a day or a week or a month? We always looked at it as clients. How many clients did we win this week, this month? How much did they spend? How often did they come back? How many shoots a year did they do with us? We thought of it as a recurring revenue business, not as how many widgets or how many pieces of this or that can
So
we
you weren't
sell.
going after independent real estate brokers where you get a video home tour. It's,
Right.
If I sell that broker on one video home tour and it's successful for them, they're going to come back and do another one and another one and another one, or that office will do multiple. So you do have a reoccurring client versus a transactional one-time customer.
Yeah, and it makes a huge difference when you look at things like, cost of acquisition per client. So say it cost us, $200 to get somebody to come in the door. If the only thing they were buying was a $300 photo shoot, that's not a very good business to be in. But if you think about it as I'm spending $200 to get a lifetime client who spends $2,000 a year, year after year, that business model makes a lot of sense. When you talk about investors and presenting financials and stuff like that. So, it always baffled me to see competitors viewing what we did as a transaction. It's like, this has got to be a recurring business or it's never going to work.
Well, I think it definitely does in pursuing. It's funny that you bring it up, is that in pursuing a business model or an idea that can become a business model, all of the different opportunities that I've ever sought, I've always looked to see, is it something that we can repetitively do over and over? Now, so happens that autism therapy, yes, you have repeat, consistently returning clients because they're getting long-term care for you. But other businesses that I've actually ventured into have either been subscription-based, reoccurring client-based, because finding a sale and then repetitively trying to find a different sale from somebody else is quite a chore. And so I'd much rather say, I'm going to do everything I can to impress Brian, the client, and win him over in that first transaction, but then prove to him why he should keep coming back for more and more return visits. If I'm in that line of business, right? Whatever the business.
I said this before. Restaurant business would scare the heck out of me. That one, kudos if you run a restaurant.
Well, that's the one I think of all the time with with a startup and new clients. So you have your grand opening. People are coming in the first week or two. If you're the owner or the manager, you've got to be all over that. Like talking to those patrons that have, for whatever reason, come in, say, how was your experience? How was the food? How was the service? I'm brand new. Go to all your neighboring businesses and homes and drop off flyers and drop off discounts. Like, hey, I just started a business in the neighborhood. Here's 20% off, your first lunch, or here's a free dessert or something. A loyalty rewards program.
You always picked up those free desserts, didn't you?
Oh, I always.
One too many desserts, I would think. And
free
we should
dessert,
actually.
I'm there. Yeah.
Funny thing, Brian actually one time was in a very important business meeting for funding. He was trying to secure some funding. He won't tell the story, but he was in a suit, 3-piece suit, all decked out after his meetings late at night. He called me. He said, Brad, you wouldn't believe what happened to me. Because I went to Denny's and I'm sitting there and he goes,
well, it wasn't a Denny's, but it was a family restaurant. A lot of families with their kids.
Family restaurant. He's sitting there late at night, full day. He's telling me how just, his whole day was just so taxing. And he met with all these different funding partners and they're trying to prove who his customers are going to be. He's like talking all these different serious aspects of business. He goes, but I got to tell you how this ended. He goes, I'm sitting at like a Denny's type restaurant. I'm sitting there and server comes over to me and says, do you want some ice cream? And I said, well, hell yeah, I want ice cream. Why wouldn't I want ice cream? And he's in his 3-piece suit. He's all decked out. He's looked like he's
by myself,
by himself, not with a group, decked out. You want ice cream? Of course I want ice cream. They bring out this little guy holding sparklers, little brownie ice cream guy.
That was ice cream snowman about this big. Must have been for like a 2-year-old's birthday party. Sparklers, hat. Every kid in the place is looking at me jealous. Every parent's going, see what happens when you have no friends?
They're
you
like,
celebrate your birthday alone.
I want what that man in the suit's got. I want that ice cream. And I just
people coming up to you afterwards saying, good luck with whatever's going on with you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Yeah.
You'll have a friend.
I'm sorry she left you.
Are you going to blow your sparklers out or would you like my 3-year-old to blow those sparklers out? I'm sorry, bro. I didn't mean to.
Well, the saddest part is I did want to be eating the whole thing.
And can you please bring out a second?
Wait, did you get the funding?
No, it was a disaster.
So no funding, ice cream you couldn't eat.
Yeah.
Clients left him.
Clients left him.
But he got his
My flight was delayed.
But he got his Stay Puft Marshmallow Man with the holding.
It was a real planes, trains, and automobies trip. You know?
Did you finish the ice cream?
I did finish the ice cream.
You did?
Yeah. What else was I going to do?
It's just so funny
I'm not a
that
quitter, Matt.
it's just so funny.
I'm
when
all in.
Right, I'm all in.
It's so funny when someone says, "Do you want ice cream?" Yes, I'll have ice cream. And it's like, and bring the sparklers out, and the little brownie guy with the ice cream is like, and all the kids are like, "I want that." It's like, why is that man sitting there by himself?
And what probably happened is she's probably like, "Are you sure you want?" He's like, "I'm sure. Let's go." And they're all like, "All right, the guy in the suit wants it. Bring it out."
So just excuse us for veering off course a bit, because those type of stories come up all the time, and we just forget about them. And Brian reminded me of this earlier today, and I was just like,
Oh, Brian was a customer.
Right. Yes, I was. I never went back. Anyway, no,
sorry, Brian.
We took an off ramp, but we can get right back on.
No,
we just get
but
right
we
on
went-
the other side.
But
get
we were
right back
talking
on our
about
house.
restaurants. are
Restaurants.
different.
Right.
That'd be difficult.
I would
think.
want to know, the first couple of weeks that I'm open, hey, what got you in here? What do you like? What do you not like? Because I got to get you back. Whether it's a loyalty rewards program, like with all of our customers, we always did something to get the second order. It's like, hey, great to order with us. What was your experience? And here's a half off for your next visit. Just because you got to get them, if it's a potential recurring business, you got to get them using. You got to get them to try it first. If they didn't like it, find out what they didn't like so they don't just leave, but then encourage them to come back that next time.
Do either of you have an example of customer feedback where it changed what you did? Can you think of anything of any kind of customer feedback where you went, didn't think of it that way, and you changed something? Not to put you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot.
Well, I'll be honest, our entire business, we had a model, we had a plan, but from day one on, it was all customer driven. To be honest, our first big customer said, we have this much money and we'd like to do this. And we said, oh, we could do that. And then we went and figured it out.
But the business plan to wrap around the money they had to spend, or just revamp your current plan to see if you can fix it to work for that particular.
It wasn't way off. It wasn't like we're doing photography and they want to buy mattresses or something. And it was something that we could then sell to other companies as well. So, but I was a fiend on client feedback. I loved sitting in customer service in the call center. I'd love going to lunch with them or sitting in on, breakfasts, because all the best ideas that we ever implemented came from some customer going, well, could you do this? Well, it'd be nice if you did that. It's like, we weren't coming up with those ideas ourselves.
Inspect what you expect too. Get in the middle of finding out
Get
what
out
is
there.
going on, what they're saying, and then go apply. For us, when we started the business, it was, we were providing one service line, and the client said, could you provide these multiple services, because I'm driving all over the place. And we said we should be the one-stop shop for any therapy-related service to a child on the spectrum. So we started offering beyond speech therapy, which we started, ABA behavior therapy, occupational therapy. We considered doing counseling service. We considered physical therapy. So it was, but by the demands of the customer dictated what you did. So you may have to pivot, you may have to move around. So I don't necessarily say, Matt, it was that specific instance of that feedback, one line, one point of feedback. But you got to listen to your clients, because if your clients will dictate which direction you should go. Should you be heavier in this one area? Should you lay off of this area? But they're going to steer if you're listening. You got to be listening, as Brian mentioned, diving and listening to client service, getting on a client service call. When the feedback comes through, take the time to see, like, why did they write that? And what can we actually do about this? We have to change what we're doing, because the customer has spoken, and
They're also, generally your best source of new customers are your existing customers. They will refer you. I always told our photographers and everybody, ask for the business. Say, hey, if this went well, can you tell your friends? Can you tell your associates? Can you let other people know? I'm passionate about this business. I'm new to the business, whatever. And, for us, it was a phenomenal source of growth.
Yeah, no,
We had a sales team and everything, but just getting referrals from existing clients is huge.
How do you figure out how does a new entrepreneur figure out the value of their customer? You mentioned, it's going to cost me 200, get 300. Any formulas that you go, what does it cost to acquire that customer?
Well, yeah, I mean, cost of acquisition is a key expense that you have to understand, and a lot of people don't.
Right.
But it's a number. It's a trackable number that you can, move up or down. And generally, you're either going to have a sales team, direct sales
force, which
indirect
represents the expense involved, the pay for the salary of an expense of a salesperson, the commissions you would pay on that salesperson, the money you would spend on marketing, any money you'd spend on advertising, any money you're spending within the realm of marketing, business development, sales, advertising. That is the cost of customer acquisition, any money that's going into that.
Times two, or no, just that cost?
You look at your revenue, the expense that you have to secure that revenue, and what is that percentage of that overall revenue, and how much money are you spending on that? And you should be looking at that, because if all of a sudden you're like, wow, the cost is becoming exorbitant to get those customers secured, you better start thinking quickly about how you're gonna, because that's a deal killer there. If you're gonna have to spend a tremendous amount of money to secure a customer, and that customer is not bringing in a very large amount of revenue or a large amount of reoccurring revenue, well, then you may have a flawed business plan, and you might need to rethink it, because the cost of customer acquisition is huge. And actually, speaking of, Brian's brought up Shark Tank a couple times, and we talked about Mark Cuban a little bit. Kevin O'Leary brings that up all the time on Shark Tank. He'll say, what's your cost of customer acquisition to get us there? Like, how are we going to get these customers secured? What's that going to cost us? It's a big deal, because if you got to put a lot of money into that, you'd be rethinking your plan.
Everybody kind of underestimates that. When I talked about don't drink your own Kool-Aid and don't get too enamored with your product and everything, everybody's like, everybody I've talked to loves this. It's like, well, there's a big difference between loving it and actually purchasing it and spending money on it.
Everyone loves this, meaning the product.
The product.
You're saying don't drink your own Kool-Aid, be realistic.
Yeah. And what does it actually do? Because, like we talked about with investors, there's choices. Yeah, I might love your product, but there's things that I need. So I'm going to spend my money on the things I need. Like, the biggest question you always got to ask is, what pain am I solving, and where does it fit in people's priorities? Is this a must-have? Is this a nice-to-have? Is this a luxury item?
Is it a need or a want? As I said back in session one, is this a need? Because if it's a need, God bless you, that's great. Because if it's a need, they're going to need it again. If it's a want, it's how often they need it or how often they want it. Is this this a nice to have, a luxury item that you're going to struggle to come up with? I mean, that's an important factor. Is it a need or a want? But if you've got a need or a want, you're halfway there, because there's people that are creating products or services that they're not even needed or wanted, and they think it's a great business idea. It's like, who's buying that? Who's buying that service? Nobody needs it. Nobody wants it. Good luck to you. I hope that works.
A universe of one customer, yourself.
Your Afghan company that you were going to start. That's
you guys will see. Those Afghans.
You reference a comedian who we can't think of the name, but it was something where there's some meeting, and it was like, well, why aren't we getting it? And sales is like, well, tell marketing.
Oh, that's a typical corporate. Yeah. He's a great. I'll find his name and post it on our site. But it's the CEO saying, okay, we're not hitting our numbers. Why aren't we hitting our numbers? Sales? And sales is like, it's the product. The product's like, whoa, wait, what? What do you mean?
Product's fine.
He's like, the product sucks. It doesn't work. Nobody wants it. The CEO's like, you can't blame product. Sales, why aren't we hitting our numbers? And he's like, well, because marketing's not doing their job. And then marketing's like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? We're getting MQLs. And it always comes down to sales.
So that's kind of the point of it. With all that, what is the confusion on who's ultimately responsible for the customer, or is it multiple departments?
No, I think Brian's point is there's just not enough focus on the customer and securing the customer quickly. The time and attention goes to everything else but that, and that needs to be paramount among things like what are you spending to go get the customer? Where are you going to get the customer? Are you aware where? Because if you can't answer all those questions, where are you going? How are you getting them? How much money are you spending to get them? If you can't answer those questions, you're most likely going to struggle with securing new clients and securing your revenue. And if that happens, you're bound to fail.
I've always thought anybody who's in a business, works in a business, should spend some amount of time in sales. Like if you haven't convinced a customer to give you a check, or a customer hasn't handed you a check because of, what you said or what you told them, you don't understand the basics of the business. And that's not a knock on people in accounting or customer service or product development or marketing. But at the end of the day, someone has to be motivated enough to give you money. And yeah, all those things go into it, the marketing and the product and the customer service and stuff like that. But somebody has to deliver that message. And yeah, there's a lot of businesses that can sell stuff just through marketing and online. But, you talk about restaurants and things like that, it comes down to the service. It comes down to the face-to-face. And, do I like these people? Do I trust these people? Do they make me feel good about myself? That's all important. And
it's funny, you're talking about new customers versus existing customers, and Matt knows this from the business that we're in right now, is that, and it happened in my prior life in the wireless infrastructure space, where one of our core themes to the business was protect the core. And protect the core was protect the core existing clients we have by providing them superlative service. Do not let them even consider going somewhere else. Like, we need to know everything about every one of our customers at all levels so that they feel like, why would I even choose switching providers? Why would I choose switching, going to another tower company, another autism provider? So don't ever take it for granted. Just because you have to find a new customer and you secure that new customer, don't take that customer for granted. I never have. I always look and say, and Matt happens to be on the client relations side. He knows we can't take a client for granted, because client leaves, you got to work twice as hard to find a new client. We'd much rather take good care of the people that have chosen to come to us and really put an emphasis there. And you can't underscore that enough. I think people take for granted. They got the customer, so we're good. We'll go find another one. We still got to take care of that one while you're looking for that one.
Well, and the challenge is that their child is getting the therapy. So really the child is the client, but the parents are the one making all the decisions. So then you have to tell, hey, we have to take care of the parents, even though the child is the one receiving the service.
Is the client.
And that is your decision making.
Yeah. Yeah. And clients aren't easy.
Yeah.
I remember, I used to do all the sales calls, sales presentations myself. And you put all the time and effort into it.
Good sales call stories.
Oh God. You trudge down there, it's 20 below, it's snowing, you walk in and do a presentation to 50, 60 different people. And, at the end, because you always got to bring food. You got to bring pizzas, you got to bring bagels, whatever. Hey, if anybody has any questions, come on up. And the first question is, are you going to be ordering any more pepperoni pizza? I'd be like, seriously? And then you get home and I look through my surveys, and one of the surveys is, they didn't pre-slice the bagels. I'm like, why am I doing this? Customers keep it interesting, but
Well, that's a good segue. We have a new segment. You've heard of the notable nuggets. We are introducing a new segment, the terrible turds. This is one where we get to share some stories that's either pitfalls or look out for. And Brad, I believe you are kicking off this terrible turd.
I can't clearly start off with a terrible turd. I got to go to a noteworthy nugget. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're doing a noteworthy nugget?
Changing it up.
Because you know what? The reason I want to is there's so many words of wisdom that were passed on to me that, and I had some really good mentors that said, hey, Brad, when you have an opportunity, pay it forward. Help somebody out that is aspiring to bigger and better things, and do what you can from. And one of the things that I heard, I used the line, I don't know, it was last week or the week before, and I said, inspect what you expect. You got 2 ears and 1 mouth. And it seems like pretty common, but since we're talking about clients, okay, which the comedian Brian Regan, Brian Regan and the dreaded me monster. Somebody comes up with something, you're like, well, me, I got something. I got to tell you something that's more important than what you have to say. You know what? You need to listen. twice as much as you talk, because a lot of what you need to know is being said to you and you're just not listening. And I've learned that the more you take in and digest and process without saying a word, just process it all, listen twice as much as you talk, you'll find that you will inherently produce that much more. You'll find a different solution, something you even consider, because you weren't trying to one up the person with saying something right after they said something, And so I just wanted to come up with a nugget. I thought that the nugget was more appropriate at this time, especially talking about clients, because you need to listen to what your clients are saying. You mentioned like, hey, there's a client ever told you something where you actually changed your direction or your offering. And I think it's because we listen, and you listen twice as much as you talk. So
is the client always right?
99% of the time.
Yeah. They're not always right in the sense that
it's a cliche, but it's...
I actually err to the side that the customer's always right. They're not right if they've actually showing disrespect to a staff member, if they're showing a lack of respect or empathy for someone that's actually trying to help them, and they berate them for something, or they don't treat a server well at a restaurant. They don't treat a provider well that's trying to help them, and they take their bad day out on them. That I don't find appropriate. And that's when a client's wrong. And I'm quick to tell a client if I see it. I'll say, you can't treat our staff like that. That's not going to happen. But for the most part, customer will tell you what's going on. And the customer is probably right 90, 95, 96% of the time.
I'll share a terrible turd.
You have a terrible turd?
Okay, you're all right.
Sure, as long as we're talking about customers.
So it's back on, folks. The terrible turd segment.
We got to get
a terrible turd.
It's
we got a mic down.
It's back on. Wow, a notable nugget and a terrible turd.
Right, two for tonight.
Kind of disgusting thinking about the nugget and the terrible turd in the same sentence, but we'll
you're ruining it
go
for
right
me.
ahead.
So we had a very important client come in from out of state to our office, and we prepared for like a week because big potential deal. This was getting close to closing, and we spent all day going over stuff, great meetings. We're like, we're going to take her out to a fancy steak place because Chicago's known for steak places. It's just, everywhere. So we go across the street to this super fancy steak place. The guy's taking our orders, like sirloin, filet mignon. Gets to her, and she's like, "Well, I'm a vegetarian." And we're like, "What the? Didn't anybody ask her what she would want for dinner?" Like so she asks the waiter, like, "Is there anything here that doesn't have meat in it?" And he's like, "Your Pepsi, maybe." So
your question,
I'll have one of those.
So the poor woman winds up ordering a grilled cheese, and it comes loaded with bacon. I'm like, you know what? I'll fall on the sword. Give me your bacon. I'll eat all your, wrap it around my steak. And we still wound up getting the deal, but we felt so stupid. Like, how could we not?
How did we miss this?
How did we miss this? How did we miss the fact that when we had cheesy beefs for lunch, she got a salad?
Next time I know a place that sells ice cream with sparklers, I'll give you I'll let you know the address. Doesn't matter if you're by yourself or with the family, they'll bring out the
whole shebang.
This may sound, just to brainstorm, are there any alternatives to customers?
How so, Matt? What are you getting at with that? Can you clarify?
Is there any other way?
If there were, that would be
that would be great. Are they paying these robot people?
Any other way to drive revenue? I guess customer could be. I'm not thinking like person. It's like any other way to drive revenue.
Well, I think you have to be open to, if you get so fixated in your ways of like, this is the only way we conduct business. Yeah. This is the only way we will make revenue. These are the only days we'll operate. These are the only times we'll operate. You have to evaluate that all the time and say, look, I mean, you've got an expense structure, whether it's rent, whether it's employees, whether it's a service line. And the question is, what more can you deliver? What other product or service can you offer with that same team and that same amount of space? And if it makes sense, you should. Now, I would caution those that would consider it that, you hear about these apparel companies or whatever, where they start out, like say they offer a sweatshirt or something, then they offer all these different SKUs, right? And they spread themselves too thin of all these different products they offer, and they don't focus on the core, what made them good. But there's nothing wrong with you have a key service line or service offering, and you say, why can't we offer also this or that, and try to generate additional revenue in that way? And if that's what you're getting at, you should always be evaluating your business for that. And we never stop thinking about what else can we provide, because you've already secured the customer.
Right.
What else does that customer need that would make logical sense for you to also offer an alternative product or service?
Right. By default, I meant, anyone who gives you money is a customer, but I meant, is there any alternatives to outside that, like outside the box thinking of how you can drive revenue?
Yeah, I don't, I wish.
No, that's it.
I mean, there's different models for, sometimes you sell through someone else, indirect distribution. So you're not actually talking to the end customers. You've got agencies or agents that do it. And so you're just focused on the product. But at the end of the day,
you have to hustle for the customer.
Yeah, someone's got to do it, whether it's you or a partner or, someone else.
And I would say also never be satisfied with the conventional way. Like if you've in your business plan that you wrote saying this is how we're going to secure customers, you should constantly, we call them organized chaos sessions, where we get into a meeting and we whiteboard and say, how else can we get these customers? Is there another way, another process we're not thinking about?
I love those kind of meetings.
You just got to brainstorm out, and every idea is a good idea. You got to generate, just because someone's going to all of a sudden throw an idea out and say, well, this is kind of stupid, but would we consider? Fantastic idea. Yes, we would. Why would we consider that? And so, shame on you if you are a business owner and you have an opportunity to brainstorm with people. You want to get that think tank going, organize chaos, start thinking about different ways to secure the customer or secure additional lines of revenue from that customer. I think that that's a really important thing that you
I love when I see that kind of creativity, like a donut shop and an ice cream shop next to each other.
Yeah.
Or, you do a deal with the local health club down the street because, you sell healthy foods and you exchange coupon, it baffles me when people don't think beyond just I sell product to people who walk in my store. It's like, if that's the only way you're going to get business, what about a website? What about, partnering with organizations, associations, referral services, synergistic companies? There's so many different ways to get at customers.
And a new line of customers that you never considered before that could potentially be interested. Just I'll give you one small example that came up. We didn't want to proceed with it for other reasons, but one of the things that we considered doing at By Your Side for the longest time was opening a daycare service incremental to the therapy services we were providing, because families were coming in saying, all right, you're going to have my one child in therapy services, but I don't know what to do with my other child because I have to go to work. And we're like, we can create a daycare facility to take care of the other sibling while we're servicing child number one. And it was something we considered. There was a number of reasons why we didn't proceed, but it would have been an additional line of service for the business that we had never written into our business plan, and needs to be something that you're considering when opening any line of business, whether you're opening an online apparel shop or a restaurant or pick your poison, whatever product you're going to sell, you should consider what are those other options you have. So it's a good question, Matt. And I don't think, to Brian's point, people think out of the box enough about where else they can take their company with that.
So there's another component to that too you made me think of, which is when you have customers and they trust you or they come to you or they have a relationship with you, you're a great avenue to sell other things to them. So companies that have customers are kind of sitting in the catbird seat. There's constantly, like we had, tens of thousands of regular customers. Other companies would come to us and say, could you sell our product to your customers? Because they trust you and you have a relationship with them and you have an order form that they've got locked in on their phone. I always encourage people to, where are your customers today? Where do they spend time today that you can get in front of them? Because if you're trying to get them to change their behavior and do something different or go someplace else, good luck with that. That's brutal. That takes a lot of time and money and effort. But if you can get in front of them where they're already at, look at like Orbitz. Gentleman I worked with was one of the founders of Orbitz, and it started out as just air, tickets for airlines. But once they had customers buying tickets for airlines, hotels, rental cars, cruises, all that other stuff, because people had gotten comfortable with, well, here's how I book my airfare.
That's a good point. That's very good. No, really interesting. No, that's I didn't know that. Is he a founder of Orbitz, or was he a...
Yeah. Oh, Alex Zoglin. Well, I'll share some. He's such an interesting guy.
Nice.
Super smart. A lot of great. We should have him on one day. He's...
That'd be very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, that's it. I think in a nutshell, I mean, you could see the amount of time we just spent talking client.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
and the list goes on and on about if you're putting your business plan together and you do not have that emphasis on the client, securing the customer, where you're going, the cost of customer acquisition, you're behind the 8 ball. So put a time and attention there.
Well, you are all our customers, so thank you for watching us. Please
subscribe,
hit the like button, send us comments. We read all the posts. And until next time, we'll see you then.
Okay, cheers.